What would happen if we never die? What if you could live forever? It's a question humanity has asked for millennia. It's the goal of countless myths, the obsession of ancient kings and the dream of modern billionaires. On the surface, it sounds like the ultimate upgrade. No more fear of the unknown, no more grief of leaving loved ones, and an infinite amount of time to learn, create, and experience everything the world has to offer. You could master every instrument, read every book, travel to every corner of the globe and beyond. You could watch civilizations rise and fall. It sounds like a paradise. But what if it's not? What if the single greatest gift we could ever receive is actually a curse in disguise? What would really happen to you and to the world if we all stopped dying? Let's start with you, the individual. The first few years or even the first century might be incredible. You're free from the ultimate deadline. You no longer have to rush your career, your relationships, or your bucket list. You feel like a god, but then the timeline starts to stretch. The concept of till death do us part in a marriage vow suddenly becomes a terrifying, eternal sentence. Could you truly stay with one person for 1,000 years? 5,000? As you and your partner change over centuries, you would inevitably drift apart. Relationships would become temporary by default, lasting maybe a few decades before you both move on. The very foundation of love and family would crumble. What about your mind? Our brains are not designed to hold 1,000 years of memories. At first, you'd cherish the memory of your loved ones from your mortal days, but after a few centuries, those memories would be buried under an avalanche of new experiences. The faces of your original family would fade. The grief would be immense, a constant dull ache from losses that accumulate over eons. You would watch everyone you ever loved, who wasn't immortal, wither and die over and over again. And then there's the problem of purpose. A limited lifespan gives our lives urgency. It forces us to make choices, to prioritize what matters. If you have forever, why do anything today? The ultimate procrastination sets in. The drive to create a legacy, to make your mark on the world, vanishes when your time is no longer a scarce resource. Life could lose its meaning, devolving into an endless cycle of fleeting distractions to combat an eternity of boredom. You wouldn't just be living, you'd be passing time forever. Now let's zoom out from the individual and look at society. This is where the utopian dream truly becomes a global nightmare. The most immediate and catastrophic problem is overpopulation. Our planet is already struggling to support 8 billion people. What happens when no one leaves? Even if we instituted a strict one-child policy, the population would continue to explode. Within a few centuries, we'd be living shoulder to shoulder, with every square inch of land occupied. This leads directly to resource collapse. Food, water, and energy would become the most precious commodities on Earth. We would strip the planet bare. Forests would vanish, oceans would be emptied, and the air would become toxic. The fight for basic survival would be relentless and brutal. Wars would be fought not over ideology, but over a loaf of bread or a clean glass of water. The economy would break. The concept of retirement would disappear. You'd be expected to work for centuries, maybe millennia, just to earn your keep. But what about innovation? Society often moves forward because new generations bring fresh ideas and challenge the old ways. An immortal society would be run by the same people with the same ideas forever. Progress could stagnate, trapping humanity in a permanent state of cultural and technological gridlock, and the inequality would be staggering. The first generation to achieve immortality, the wealthy and powerful, would have an eternal head start. They would accumulate wealth and influence for centuries, creating a permanent, unbreachable class of elites. The gap between the haves and the have-nots wouldn't just be a gap. It would be a chasm stretching across eternity. Society would fracture into two species, the immortal gods and the eternally struggling masses. But the deepest horror of immortality isn't social or psychological. It's existential. Immortality doesn't just mean you get to live forever. It means you can't die. Think about that. You can't die. No matter what happens when you get into a terrible accident? What if you're trapped in a fire, or at the bottom of the ocean, or buried under a rock slide? You wouldn't die. You would simply endure the pain, conscious forever. There would be no escape. Suicide would be impossible. You would be a prisoner in your own unbreakable body. And let's think even bigger. Our sun won't last forever. In about 5 billion years, it will expand into a red giant and swallow the Earth. You would be there for that, incinerated but unable to die, floating in the void. And what about the end of everything? The eventual heat death of the universe, where all stars have burned out and all that's left is a cold, dark, empty expanse. You would still be there, drifting alone in the infinite silent darkness, for eternity, with nothing but your own thoughts. When you look at it this way, our mortality doesn't seem like a curse. It seems like a gift. It's the deadline that gives our actions meaning. It's the scarcity of time that makes each moment precious. It's the knowledge that our lives are finite, that pushes us to love deeply, create boldly, and live fully. Death is what makes us human. It's the final silent punctuation mark that gives the sentence of our lives its structure, its beauty, and its purpose. So maybe the question isn't, how can we live forever? Maybe the real question is, what will we do with the beautiful, fleeting time that we have? What do you think? Would you take the offer of immortality, even with all the risks? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.